morning. Welcome to the ANC Grassroots Conference and the panel on Transnational Justice, Contemporary Approaches. I'll be making brief introductory remarks about the conference in general and this panel in particular. This weekend's conference intends to present to the Armenian community new channels of pursuing the Armenian cause, going beyond mere genocide recognition. This particular panel will present the international legal opportunities to resolve our Armenian demands from the Republic of Turkey in terms of reparations, restitution, and return of Armenian assets and lands. Aram Hamparian will moderate and introduce the three distinguished speakers. Aram is an exemplary ANC activist and my personal hero in the struggle for Haita. During the past 15 years that Aram has been the executive director of the ANCA, we have contacted each other on a weekly basis and sometimes even on a daily basis. Thanks to Aram and Elizabeth, whom you heard earlier, and their dedicated and competent staff, they're working around the clock, literally, to defend Armenian rights in Washington, D.C. Aram and the ANCA are on the top of every development in Congress, the State Department, the White House, and the national media, all the while countering every move Turkish and Azeri governments and their high-priced lobbyists make in this country against Armenian interests. Thank you, and I'll turn over the balance of my time to the distinguished moderator, Ara Papian.
Thank you. I told myself I was going to jump right in, but I have to say a special thank you to Harut and so many others here who've been teachers of mine throughout my adult life. I know Murat Tupayan's here, who's been a great friend and teacher as well. So I think that all of us in our high-tide experiences, in our activism, have had people in our lives who brought us along, who mentored us, who taught us, who held our hand. And I think we're all grateful for that. We're all part of a long chain of Armenian identity that goes back literally thousands of years. And the best thing that we can do in return for all that we've been given is to hand that off to the next generation and in the hope and the expectation that they, in turn, will hand it off to the next generation after them. We are part of a remarkable tribe. We have great cause to be justifiably proud of all that we've accomplished. We are, the previous panel talked about Karabakh, and there are young men and young women as well who serve on the front lines of that battle, but we are in a very, very important way the second army of the Armenian nation, and we should be very, very proud of ourselves. So give yourselves a round of applause. It's very important. Any calculation of the strength of the Armenian nation takes us into account. We're a very, very important part of the Armenian equation. Turning now to our panel, I'll start with a quick question. Maybe we can touch on it later as well. Was the genocide committed against the Armenians a conflict, or was it a crime? If you answer conflict, then we could just pack up because there's not much of a cause for this panel, right? We could simply outsource the resolution of this conflict to the State Department, to allies of Ankara. We could set up a TARC. We could set up rights and protocols. We could even have a historical commission. And they could just deal with it the way you deal with conflicts in life, which is you try to find a middle ground, you split the difference, and you move forward. And you let these two parties, right, the Turkish party and the Armenian party, already unequal prior to 1915, but made all the more unequal by virtue of the crime committed and visited upon the Armenian nation. Well, we can leave it to these two parties to resolve their conflict. Or we can say no. This was not a conflict. This was, in fact, a crime. And if it was a crime, the answer is not conflict resolution, it is criminal justice. It is criminal justice that will deliver a moral response, one that we know is fair in our hearts, one that all humans will know is fair in their hearts. A response, a criminal response, that will help prevent other genocides around the world by destroying the precedent set by Ankara of a genocide committed and denied with impunity. The world will be a safer place when that precedent has been ended. Armenia will be a safer place when it is no longer bordered by an unrepentant and overarmed perpetrator of genocide. Turkey itself will be a better place when it leaves genocide in its past, when it becomes a post-genocidal society that does not resolve its issues through violence and imprisonment and murder. And Armenia will have a brighter future when the elements of viability denied to it, stolen from it during the genocide, are restored to her. For all these reasons and more, we must pursue the Armenian genocide as an unresolved crime, not as a conflict. To discuss these and many, many other issues are three just stellar panelists who I'm honored to be able to even associate with. The first is Ara Papian, who has served for many years in Armenia's foreign ministry, including as a top official in the ministry, but also as ambassador to Canada. Since then, he got a promotion from ambassador of the Armenian Republic to ambassador for the Armenian nation, and ever since, if he did great things within the ministry, he's done even better things outside the ministry, and he's taught us a lot. He has taught us, for example, that we need not think that all the rights of the Armenian nation, all of our claims to justice, derive from the genocide. There are other bases for our claims, and that's very powerful. It's an idea I think that takes time to take root, but he has been the Johnny Appleseed of that idea, and we owe a great debt to him. Second is Dr. Jermaine McCalpin from the University of the West Indies, who I have a habit now of following him from city to city and state to state. I first met Dr. McCalpin when he spoke in Virginia at George Mason University. I followed him to the ANC conference in Washington, D.C., and now I'm here in California, and I'm going to do a little Google research to find out where you're speaking next, because I cannot get enough of his remarks. A brilliant thinker. We're very, very honored to have him with us today. And finally, Professor Michael Bazyler of the Chapman University School of Law right here in Orange, California. We're meeting for the first time, but I did have a chance to read your paper, which is available as a PDF on the ANC Grassroots website. I recommend you all read it. Professor Bazyler has been very active in writing about the rights, the legal rights of the Armenian nation, sort of making that transition from asserting claims to pursuing claims. Also a very noted and renowned expert on the question of Holocaust-ers and the rights that have been denied to them. I think he brings a great comparative approach to these issues for us. He's a consultant as well on, I understand, several lawsuits that deal with the Incirlik Air Base, cases that are brought against different Turkish entities, including the Republic of Turkey. So I think that that's the front line. There's really no more cutting-edge place in the Armenian cause today than that occupied by Professor Bazyler. So with that, I will invite Dr. Papian to offer his remarks. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be here to share some of my ideas with you. I am delighted twice, and even more, because this will give me an opportunity to represent a very important publication, which is the full report done by US President Woodrow Wilson, dividing the border between Armenia and Turkey. I will be speaking about legal rights, legal basis, dealing with Armenian territory. Can we have? Woodrow Wilson, you already know, he was 28th President of the United States. Very crucial time when the United States were in war in Europe in the First World War, and he was chosen later to be the arbitrator for the defining the border. This is actually the last page of that arbitration, the original copy. This is the cover of new publication. I would like to say that this full report never was published. Only chapter 7 was published after World War II, But the full report is very important, and we'll see why. This is the copy which is now in NARA, National Archives and Records Administration in Washington, D.C. Why Woodrow Wilson was chosen to be an arbitrator? Because since 1916 he was directly involved in humanitarian efforts to support, to help Armenians orphans. These are two steps that were sold at that time in the United States to generate money to feed the Armenian orphans. But for me at least, most important his participation is being an arbitrator who defined finally and without appeal the border between Armenia and Turkey. Little bit historical background to understand what was going at that time. Just after World War I, and the World War I was ended for the Ottoman Empire on October 13, 1918, in Paris, you know, there was organized peace conference since January 1909, and four main powers, heads of United States, France, Italy, and British Empire, were so-called Big Four, and they were deciding the new order. It is natural that the principal Allied powers that first decided the future, the fate of Europe, and then only in April 1920, they began deliberating on Armenian fate of the Ottoman Empire. And on 26th of April, in San Remo conference, an official letter was agreed upon, signed and sent to US President, asking two separate questions. This I would like to underline because there is a lot of confusion. People confuse the issue of mandate and issue of border or even Treaty of Self. They are different issues. The first issue was asking was that the Allied powers, on behalf of all the others, at that time over 50 countries, were asking US to accept a mandate over Armenia. Unfortunately for us, on June 1st, 1920, Senate declined this request, but on the second request, which is accepting the status of arbitrator, on May 17, 1920, already was an official positive answer. US President agreed to be an arbitrator, to define the border. I would like you to pay attention on the date, here the document, 17th of May. This is at least 2.5 months before Treaty of Sevres was signed. Treaty of Sevres was signed August 10, 1920, which means that even without Treaty of Sevres, there was an application, so-called compromise, according which Wilson had the right to define the border. Just after that, in January 1920, a special commission was put together, headed by William Westerman, Professor William Westerman from Wisconsin University, and they began together to put together all available documentation to come out with this arbitration. There were representatives of State Department, War Department also included there. The official title, the official name of the decision is Decision of the President of the United States of America respecting the frontier between Turkey and Armenia, access Armenia to the sea, which means the second part, and the third, and the delimitation of Turkish territory adjacent to Armenian frontier, which means that it deals with three main parts of the same question: border, access to the sea, and delimitation. This already have you seen. This is the original copy of that decision, which done on blue paper, legal size paper. Is it there? These are two two first pages of the decision. This is the map attached, more or less famous map. This one you can, because this map was published several times. It's also published in this book, but in this book you can find also other 28 maps that never were published. One of them "25 maps are the detailed maps of the border, because arbitrations, they are final and binding decisions. And for that reason, just after November 22nd, when the arbitration was done, the award was given, a special map, more detailed map, this is you can see, was prepared by Department of War for commission to go there and to demark the border, which means to put that special signs on the border. Here you can see more details. You can see this is the map of General Staff Ottoman Empire, and Americans just added more details on the map. The whole border was divided into 19 pieces to make easier to implement. Because of the time, I will not go into many details, but just I will say that according to international law, there are 4 criteria that here you can read, that according which you assess the validity of any arbitration. And we can, doing this elaboration, we can easily say that it is valid because none of one of these criteria was broken. This why I was repeating several times that arbitration is final. Because in international law, the Hague Convention from 1899 and later 1807, it clearly indicates that the award duly pronounced and notified to the agents of the parties settles, and the second version you have put to the end, the dispute definitely and without appeal. Definitely and without appeal. This is the difference between arbitrations and treaties. Treaties can be renegotiated. Arbitrations cannot be, because this is a verdict, a court decision. It can be done, and this is the highest level that is. I would like to quote US Ambassador to Germany, James Gerard, saying that the arbitral decision of the President rests not upon the Sevres Treaty of August 10, but upon the invitation of Allied Supreme Council of April 1920. This, as I was telling, that it is not done upon the Sevres Treaty, because unfortunately many saying that Treaty of Sevres is not ratified, and because of that, arbitration is not valid. It's not rests on Treaty of Sevres. It's totally different process parallel to Treaty of Sevres. Treaty of Sevres supports this idea, and we can see why. As I mentioned about treaties, and I know that these questions will come out, I will generally go through the treaties, just mentioning that after World War I, from 1918 up to 1923, 5 treaties were signed dealing directly or indirectly with the border between Armenia and Turkey: Treaty of Sevres, Treaty of Alexandropol, Treaty of Moscow, Treaty of Kars, and Treaty of Lausanne. Directly or indirectly. And to assess this, first we have to understand what is a treaty. And all these documents that I spoke about are really treaties. According to Article 2 Vienna Convention of 1969, which is codification of international law, which means the norms of the principles already existed before the Vienna Convention. The Vienna Convention just put in a written way, codified it. Article 2 says treaty means an international agreement concluded between the states, in written form and governed by international law. This means that a document, an agreement to be a treaty, must be signed by official representatives of a recognized government, of a recognized state. Not any group of people can sign a document and just name it, put a title, a treaty, and it will become a treaty. No. To do this, there are special criteria for this. And also, the manual of United Nations, which gives some more explanations, interpretation, says the same, that it's an agreement between subjects of international law. Actually, almost the same, a little bit broader, because the subjects of international law, now we consider some international organizations. And also in the same Vienna Convention, we have Article 53 saying that the treaty is void if at the time of its conclusion it conflicts with a preparatory norm of general international law. It must be that during the time that it was signed, it must be according to international law. It must be governed. There must not be any violation of that. And when we assess and come back to these 5 treaties, we can see that only Treaty of Sevres is a valid document. It's valid, it's not in force. It's a valid document because it was negotiated and signed between official representatives of a recognized country and government. But Treaty of Alexandropol, from one side it was signed by a group of people, a movement, a nationalist movement of Kemalists, a bunch of criminals, and saying criminals, I'm not saying just some military. They were an official Ottoman court sentenced, let's say, Kemal Atatürk to that because as a war criminal on May 11, 1920. And even there was a fatwa, the leader, religious leader of Ottoman Empire, confirming that. And all the generals around him were the same kind of criminals. Now they are called heroes, but at that time they were criminals. And one of the reasons why they are fighting so viciously back, because they are fighting for their lives. It's not only saving their country. They knew what, you know that there was a court-martial in Ottoman Empire and so on. And if you assess, we can say that all treaties signed before 1923, October 29, which means that the Republic of Turkey was at least proclaimed, declared. All these treaties, Treaty of Alexandropol, Moscow, and Kars, cannot be considered as treaties because Turkish side did not represent at that time government, only a bunch of former generals. The same from, let's say, Armenian or Russian side, Alexandropol. At that time, Armenian delegation had no power to sign any document because a day before that government resigned, in Treaty of Moscow, Russian Bolshevik government was recognized as a lawful representative of Russian Empire only on February 1st, 1924. At that time it wasn't recognized. Treaty of Kars was signed by Soviet Armenia, which never was a subject of international law. It was an occupied territory by 11th Army, and then it was incorporated into Soviet Russia, which was renamed Soviet Union. Legally, it remained as occupied territory, and we have in this country several hearings of Senate saying that the territory is occupied up to 50s. And I would like to say that up to 1933, US government recognized official Armenian representative in Washington, at that time Garegin Pastermachian, as official representative of Armenian Republic. They continued the recognition up to 1933. And they just renounced the recognition because in 1933 they recognized the Soviet Union. Just a quick view of Treaty of Sevres, because this also will come out. Yes, Treaty of Sevres was not ratified and did not enter into force totally, the whole. Yes. But in treaties you have some parts that it's defined that this part can enter into before. It's put some other conditions. Some critical timeline is totally different. And when we read Article 89, which deals with this Armenian-Turkish border, it clearly said that the parties applied to US President for the arbitration and they agreed to accept his decision thereupon. It's unconditional acceptance. It's not saying that after ratification, thereupon. And Article 90 of the same Treaty of Sevres clarifies, especially for Turkish parts, saying that from the date of such decision, Turkey will renounce all rights and title. And the date is November 22nd, when it was signed and sealed by United States officials. It's entered into force, and Turkey renounced all this. Because there is always a question that was the compromise, the application for arbitration legal or not legal, valid or not valid, how much? I would like just to quote from this book, from the full report, H4, which is the official position of State Department and US administration. It's not the view of Papian or some other scholar. It's the highest official of United States that State Department has the right, according to US has the right to define any position regarding foreign relations. And it says, all the powers signatory to the treaty have, by fact of the signature, by their plenipotentiaries, expressed their intention of accepting terms of the present arbitral decision. State Department clearly says that by the fact of signature, because for compromise or arbitrations, you do not need the compromise to be ratified. We have in the history of Ottoman Empire, arbitration between Ottoman Empire and Russia, which was based only on signature of the ambassadors. In history, you have thousands and thousands, hundreds and hundreds, let's say, arbitrations. They are all based on signature, no ratification needed for it. In international law, for a compromise, for the application, you do not